Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. My guest today tried everything to achieve success and subsequently lost everything, becoming homeless in his mid-40s. However, he succeeded in building his life back better than ever before, and along the way uncovered the key to creating the ideal life by using your brain in the right way, something I am accused of on a daily basis of not having the capability to do. It's now his mission to share this understanding with others, and I'm so privileged to have him here to do the same for you. Tailoring talkers, please join me in welcoming Liam Naden to the Tailoring Talk Show. Liam, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Roberto. Thanks a lot for having me here and your very nice introduction. Thank you.
I was so excited to record with you today. Even more excited when you told me that you're from New Zealand, because I automatically thought that you were in New Zealand right now, because you'd have been my first New Zealand guest.
Great.
But you're not in New Zealand, you're in France.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But that's okay, because you're my first guest from France.
I'm probably also your first guest who lives on a boat as well.
I was going to ask you about that because I was kind of just looking at the background and I was like, that kind of looks like the inside of a boat, but I can see the reflection above your head and it looks like water ripples.
Okay.
So you are on a boat.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so you're my first New Zealander. You're my first person who's actually in France while we're recording. And you're also my first person on a boat. That's 3. That's a hat trick. My day's done.
I'm sure there are a few more first, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, Liam, what are you doing in France right now, by the way? Are you on holiday?
No, I live on a boat and we just cruise around Europe and have been doing so for the last 7 years, just seeing where it all takes us, enjoying the beautiful scenery of Europe.
Oh my God, you're my hero. That's so cool. We're going to get into more stuff and people will understand why you're such a hero. So, using your brain to achieve success in life, something that you kind of worked out when you went through a few ups and downs. So what happened? How did you go from, I guess, a level of success to then just completely losing everything and having to start from rock bottom again?
Yeah, well, it certainly puzzled me for a long time because, excuse me, I'd been pretty well a student of success for most of my life. I was the person who went to all the seminars, did all the courses, read lots of books, studied all sorts of techniques of self-help and personal development, from things like goal setting and how to change your beliefs, how to change your thoughts, how to be a positive thinker, how to set goals and make sure that they got the right goals and achieve your goals. And I was really successful at a lot of that sort of thing because in my life I was an entrepreneur. I've had 18 different businesses in my life, including what I'm doing now. And life was going pretty well, I thought. I was making plenty of money. I was, as I say, had my own businesses. I had my own houses and things like that, and married and all that sort of stuff. But what I noticed was, along with that came an awful lot of stress and problems. And it was like, I was starting to believe the story that I had read, which is that's a natural part of success. You've got to struggle. If you want to be the best that you can be in your life, if you want to have a great life, if you want to achieve great things, you're going to have to overcome adversity. You're going to have to really struggle and deal with problems. And as I say, I started to believe that. Now, I've since discovered that none of that is actually true, and it doesn't make any logical sense that problems are good or that stress is good. And I'll explain why later when we talk about how the brain works.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm just looking at my sort of business library in front of me and my books on sales and so on. And they all have variations of the same thing, right? That
Mm.
you have to always be trying to find a way around, over, under, through any adversity that comes your way, and so on. And what, as you were talking there, in fact, actually, even before that, when I found out you were on a boat and you've just been, kind of living your life. Sorry if I've made an assumption there, but kind of cruising around Europe and so on, and probably doing all the things that you actually want to do. That I've been completely misguided my entire career.
Well, we all have, because the funny thing about it is, how many people are happy? How many people actually feel successful? Versus how many people are stressed, worried, and just in this constant state of struggle. And as I say, I was in that camp, and I believe this is the path to life, because, as you say, virtually every book that you read tells you that. You've got to set bigger goals. You've got to constantly be striving and working hard, and you're going to have these problems that you have to deal with. But when I, in my mid-40s, lost everything and became homeless after being a multimillionaire, after having this life that on the outside looked like sort of successful, although it didn't feel like that on the inside, because, as I say, I had lots of stress and problems. And therefore, I was constantly trying to overcome all of that. But when I lost everything, I thought, how could this have happened to me? Because I'm an expert on success. I know all about goal setting. I've done numerous goal setting workshops. I've read books. I've done courses on all of these different things. I've studied spirituality. I've done meditation, and I've done all these law of attraction type, processes. And I know all about all of these sorts of things, but yet I don't feel in control of my life. This shouldn't have happened to me, but it has. And here I am in my mid-40s, moving in with my elderly mother, sleeping on the couch in the living room of her small flat with nothing. How could this have happened? So that really puzzled me. And the other thing that I asked myself at that time as well is, how do I get out of it? Because I thought I had all the information. I had all of these strategies, techniques, methods, processes, both external on things to do and internal about changing your beliefs and thoughts and all those sorts of things. But I just didn't have a clue on what to do. But anyway, a long story short, I got through that whole, as you do, get through the process of coming out the other side. And what I noticed was my life was going in operating in quite a different way, because I was starting to set up new businesses and earn some good money again. I attracted a new personal relationship, which was really great, far better than any I'd had before, if you like. And things were falling into place. But what I really noticed was, whereas before I'd been chasing after success, I'd been really pushing, struggling, trying to figure out how to be in control of my life, something weird was happening to me, because it was almost like success was coming to me. Instead of me going and having to try and figure out things, somebody would come along and say, "Hey, Liam, here's an idea for a business that you could do, or something to add to your business." And I go, "Well, that's a great idea. Where did this person come from? Where did that idea come from?" I'd wake up and think, "Oh, I've just got a great idea." And all of these people, these circumstances, these ideas, and these situations, they all seem to create a flow in my life. Things were just working really well. And one of the best things, and I realized after a while, was I suddenly thought to myself, "Hey, this is really good." But the best thing of all, I don't have any stress or problems. I'm not waking up in the morning dreading opening my email. I'm not going to bed at night worried about all the problems I'm going to have to deal with the next day. And I'm not just finding continually these things coming out of me, or coming at me out of left field, that I go, "Oh, I finally thought I could relax, and now I've got this other problem I have to deal with." I thought, this is really strange. This is nothing like what my life's about. Things are flowing. Things are going really well. And of course, I was working hard, and still am, actually, even though I'm on a boat. But it was productive work. It is productive work. It's not struggle. It's not doing so much of what I used to do, which was actually trying to fix problems based on decisions I should never have made in the first place. And I think many of us are in that situation. We keep doing the wrong things. We go, "Oh, I have to clean up that mess." So I thought to myself, I don't want to. I need to figure out what I'm doing differently, because I don't want to stop this. I don't want to mess this up, because this is actually really feels like how I'm supposed to live my life. And so I went on a mission to figure out what I was doing differently. And, I had all this knowledge and information about all these things and all these books and different teachers and, you name it.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I missing here? What's the missing link that would actually make this work? And one of the things, because I was starting to travel around a lot and more latterly on a boat, but earlier than that, in a motorhome actually as well, I thought I started to spend a lot more time in nature. And it suddenly occurred to me that we live in a natural world, so there must be some sort of biological purpose to life. And not only to other life, but to our life on a biological level, because we're part of nature. And what I noticed with nature was that it is actually, and scientists have actually backed this up, it is generally successful. Nature exists. It is, some people have said it's 98% successful. If you look at any species or any organism, they are successful. They're not stressed. They're not living with danger and problems. The 2% of things like the tree might be planted in the wrong place, or they get swept away by a storm, or there's a drought or whatever it is. But in general, nature is a very, very successful environment. But the funny thing is, if you look at there's only one exception, that's humans. Humans are actually 98% unsuccessful because nobody's happy. Everybody's stressed, as I mentioned earlier.
And we seem to be hell-bent on self-destruction, and we seem to have been since we came into existence. Or we became
it's
intelligent.
It's because we've been told the wrong way to live our life. So when I started to look at this, and because on a biological level, success is the nature of nature. That is what it's here to do. And if you actually think about what the purpose of life is, and it was a question I asked and researched and found that biological scientists will tell you there is a purpose to all life, and that must include our life. And the purpose on a biological level is to survive. That's what all biological life is wired, designed to do, is to do its best to survive. And how does it do that? It does it when it is at its best. So the best chance anything has of surviving is when it's at its best. And that includes us. But for humans, that doesn't just mean being your best physically, because when you're your best physically, you obviously have the greatest chance to resist disease or fight infection or, recover from disease.
Yeah.
But it also means mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, because when you're at your best mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, that does give you the greatest chance for survival, because you come up with the right ideas. You're most resourceful, creative, imaginative. You think of better ways to run your life and to help other people run their life. So it is actually true that we, along with every other species, are wired for survival. In other words, to be the best that we can be. So why are 98% of people not the best they can be? That's the question. And it comes down to the next thing, which is to say, well, okay, on a biological level, what has nature provided? There must be some mechanism, system, mechanics, or machinery, or whatever it is, that is designed to ensure that everything is the best that it can be, so it has the greatest chance for survival. And it turns out there is, and that every living thing has been given a tool to ensure that it is or to strive to make sure it's the best that it can be to give it the greatest chance of survival, and that is a brain. And a brain exists for the sole purpose to make sure that that organism is the best that it can be and has the greatest chance of survival, so that it can carry on the survival of the species. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. So, but if we've got a brain, and if that's the purpose of our brain, then why isn't it doing that? Why aren't we being the best that we can be? Why aren't we living this perfect life to ensure, if that's what it's designed to do, there's something wrong here, And of course, like any machine, because your brain is simply a machine designed to ensure that you're the best that you can be, that's its job. Like any machine, if it's used the wrong way, what happens? Problems show up. And it's a bit like a motor car. Now, I think, this is an analogy I sometimes use. A car is a machine, and it's got a very specific purpose. You know what it's designed to do. It's designed to get you from where you are to where you want to go, and it will do it predictably, efficiently, enjoyably, all of those things. You don't have to worry about it. That's what it's designed to do. But if you don't know how to drive the car, or if it's not operating the right way, what happens? You don't get to where you want to go. You have lots of problems. The machinery doesn't work properly. You have a pretty bumpy ride, and it's a pretty stressful experience. So, and in fact, with our car, if someone was to say, if you were to say, well, I want to use a car and get from here to 100 miles away for a party or whatever, but I don't know how to drive a car, someone would say to you, well, you if you want to get it to work properly, you have to learn how to drive it. And you might say, oh, well, just give me a quick tip on how to get there. That's not how it works. And it's the same with the brain. No one's told us how to drive this machine for it to do its job, which its job, as I said earlier, is to make sure we're the best that we can be. So that's really what I do now is, and when I started to realize this, I started to pull all the pieces together and see what the missing links were and see how, and actually in some places, including in religion and spirituality, we have been taught how to use our brain the right way. We've just never interpreted it the right way because we don't understand, firstly, that it's a machine designed to make us the best that we can be, and secondly, how it operates. So that's what I do now, is share this information and hopefully help people to move to the state they're supposed to be in, happy, successful, doing what they're supposed to be doing in their life and feeling good, and therefore having the greatest chance of survival, living out their biological purpose, if you like.
Yeah. Well, because we often take our brains for granted, because I guess, really, when I think about it, I know I use my brain for a certain amount of thinking, but other than that, I just assume it's kind of there to kind of run all the other processes that my body needs to go through just to keep going and to kind of tell me things and to process information, whether it comes in through my eyes, my ears, my mouth, whatever. But then when you think about maybe the amount of CPU, because I'll always use the computer analogy, the amount of power it takes to do those things is probably not very much. It's probably a small percentage of its capacity, its power. We're not using the rest of it. So the question is, how do we begin to unlock? And also, it was funny enough, the interview before you was with someone who, basically helps people to kind of, look at themselves, where they are, where they want to get to, and to use that information to kind of build a better life and so on. And, self-awareness being very important. How do we start to get people being more aware of the enormous potential of this huge muscle that sits in our skulls? So it's hurting my head just thinking about it.
Well, the great thing about all
my
this...
wife is sat there, she's just laughed because she'd say I'm prime candidate for an exercise like this.
Well, the biggest
sorry.
The biggest misconception about using your brain, that it's about thinking. Because your thinking brain, I have a model for the brain, there's actually 4 parts to the brain. Your thinking part is only one part. And your thinking part is not there to design your life. That comes from a different part of your brain. And this is the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems when people don't understand how our brain works, is that everybody's trying to think their way through their life. That's not how your brain works. And that's why you get stressed and why you have problems. It's because your thinking brain, one of the 4 parts, that's not its job. It's, as I say, and so it's going to cause you problems. You're never going to work it out by thinking. And there's a lot of misconception about what the brain is. The first misconception is about how powerful it is, because as you say, yes, we think about the brain and, it makes us think and it keeps us going and all that. Our brain is unbelievable. It has talking about a computer, it has the computing power of 500 trillion computer microprocessors. That's just in your brain, So it not only has the ability and the power to sort your life out and to have you living life, or it not only is designed to have you sort your life out and being the best you can be, it's capable of doing that, not just on a physical level, not just on a few good ideas level, but on a complete level, to design your life for you without you having to struggle and try and figure it out. Because if you're trying to struggle and figure it out, that you're not going to succeed. And I had that experience for most of my life, trying to do it that way. And all it created was problems and stress, because when I learned how the brain works, I realized that's not the way to do it.
So what is the way to do it? Is this now, are we is this what you call neurostate rebalancing?
I have a process that I developed called neurostate rebalancing, which is about, as the name suggests, how to get your brain working the right way.
Right.
But really there are a couple of steps that you need to know before that, and the most important thing you need to know after you acknowledge the power of the brain, and that comes with a bit of understanding as well. If you know that it's like a car, if you know it has the power to get you to where you want to go, you don't question it, and you go, well, I'd be crazy to not learn how to drive a car, because that's going to do the job that I want it to do, or a job I want to get done perfectly. That's the way to do it. And the second thing with the brain is to understand how it actually works. And it's the same again with a car, that if you get in with a car and you've got your foot on the foot brake and your other foot on the accelerator, and you've got the handbrake on, and you're not doing anything, someone comes along to you and says, that's not the way to drive it. That's why you're not getting any results. This is the way you use it. Then you go, oh, well, that makes total sense. So if someone else came along to you after that and said, well, put the handbrake on and the accelerator on and the foot brake on at the same time, you'd go, no, I understand now. That's not how it works. So maybe what I could share maybe is the model I've created of how your brain actually works. And I think even by understanding that, people are going to see, they're instantly going to see, I can see what I've been doing wrong,
Yeah. But I mean, just to go back a step, because it seems it's something that you said earlier on about the way that we see problems. We almost see problems as being a normal part of life, that we have to have problems in order to progress and to achieve. If we don't overcome problems, we don't achieve anything. But then when you actually ask someone, do you want problems in your life? Sorry, doorbell's just gone. Don't know if you've got dogs or if you've ever had dogs at any time in your life, but
yeah.
One day we're looking for a studio space at the moment, and when that happens, I will be moving the podcast recording there.
Okay.
Won't be here. Although the
problem.
Space that I want is actually dog friendly, but they'll just get kicked out when it's recording time. Sorry, where was I before Emily completely shattered my thought process? So
problems are natural and good.
If you ask most people, do you want problems in your life? I think the answer that most people would give, if not all, would be, no, I don't want any problems. Yet we seem to kind of go through inviting problems on. And it seems, I don't know if this is some sort of conditioning that we humans put ourselves through from a very, very early age. Because if you think about when you're, even before nursery, when your parents start buying you Ladybird books or buying you toys, they're all to do with problem solving.
Yeah. Well,
why do we do that to ourselves?
Because we've been conditioned to believe it's a bit like it is the blind leading the blind to a large degree. If you don't want to go down any conspiracy route, is to say people are doing it intentionally as a means of control, which it is actually. But anyway, all that aside, we've all been conditioned to believe that there's some benefit and some virtue in problems, and yet we don't want them. So where's the contradiction in that? It's a total contradiction. But the thing is, there is no benefit or virtue in problems, because you can learn absolutely everything you need to learn without encountering a problem. So a problem is learning it the hard way. And in fact, who wants to do that? That would suggest the only successful people in life, or the only way you can ever do anything, is by having a problem that you overcome, and that's how you learn. There are far better ways, far more effective ways to develop yourself, be the best that you can be, than overcoming problems. And in fact, biologically and in every other respect, problems do not help you. When they cause you stress, what does that do? That doesn't help you be the best that you can be. That doesn't help you survive longer.
No, not at all.
It reduces your lifespan. So there's no, on a really practical level, problems are unnatural. Problems are just a sign that you're doing the wrong way. Now, sometimes people mistake problems for effort, and they think, well, you've got to put in a lot of effort. But there's a difference between putting an effort to solve problems and putting an effort to be productive. And people, if you use the same energy and the same effort to be productive, living a great life, you would be far better off, and your whole world we'd all be far better off if that was the focus and the times that people spent was being productive and creative, which you can't be actually because of how your brain works when you're trying to solve problems.
Yeah. But then I know that a lot of my listeners will probably be listening to this right now thinking to themselves, okay, like I'm totally on board with the fact that, right, I've got the brain thing. We need to learn how to utilize it. I've got the thing that I don't really want problems in my life. That does not make any sense whatsoever. But the fact is that I've got to whatever age I am right now, listening to Liam and Roberto talking, and my life is full of problems. And how am I going to move on from this and kind of create this physical paradigm shift in my life, and then kind of move on from that point where I've got to kind of untangle this mess of Christmas lights that my life is right now?
Well, the fastest way you're going to untangle the mess of Christmas lights that is your life right now is by using your brain the right way. Because remember, your brain is designed to make sure that you are the best that you can be. It has the power, the ability, and the purpose of taking you from wherever you are right now to turning you into the best that you can be. So it's going to find the easiest, most effective, most powerful way to do that if you allow it to do its job. So instead of you struggling away doing it wrong and getting all the wrong results, and let's face it, and I was honest for myself, I'd spent 45 years doing it wrong, and then I had to admit it wasn't working. I didn't want it to be like that anymore. It was too hard. So when you acknowledge that, and then you say, well, maybe there is a different way. Maybe it does make sense biologically that we're not supposed to have problems. Maybe I have been taking the wrong approach. Maybe I need to figure out find out what the right approach is. And maybe I should give it a try and see what happens. But part of what happens when you start using your brain the right way is you might find you're going to have to make some what might seem to be difficult decisions. They're going to be the right decisions, but they might appear to be difficult. But the beauty is when you use your brain the right way, it's a lot easier to make the right decisions. Whereas we've all had the experience of faced with a really hard decision to make, and a little voice in us tells us, don't marry that person, don't take that job, don't employ that person, don't do that business deal. But we go ahead anyway. We put that out of our mind, and we block it out, and we go, no, I'm determined to make this work, and I'm also afraid that something better won't come along if I don't grab this opportunity. I'll make it work. It'll be okay. And of course, it all turns into a mess of disaster that we have to try and spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to clear up. So it's very possible. And remember, I was homeless. I mean, that, people say, well, it's all very well for you. You say you don't have any problems.
You had one of the biggest problems. One of the things that I live in constant fear that, and again, it's one of those beliefs that I have that it's my fear that drives me and keeps me from failing. But the fear that I could just lose everything at the last minute. I mean, what happened to you is one of my worst nightmares, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people listening right now.
The funny thing about it, the reason I lost everything was because that was my fear. My biggest fear was losing everything. And that was what had driven all the bad decisions I made, which led me to lose everything, if you like. Because I was always, and I didn't realize it, but subconsciously it was driving my life. I was always thinking, I need more. I can't be satisfied with what I've got, because subconsciously, what happens? I could lose everything. I need more to make sure I don't lose everything. So this is one of the interesting things about what happened to me and how I developed neurostate rebalancing, actually, is a way to uncover what you're afraid of and realize that what you're afraid of is the enemy. You've got to get rid of that fear, because there's a very real chance that you're going to, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying in general, it's not the fear of something is not what helps you make the right decisions and moves your life in the right direction so that you can actually live the life that you're supposed to, being the best that you can be, which ironically is a life without fear as well. When you're the best that you can be, that's when you're happy, when you're feeling excited and you're feeling great, the opposite of being afraid. Yeah. And it all ties in, as I say, with how the brain works on a biological level. This isn't just ideas. This actually has a biological basis to it all.
Yeah. So how do we start on this path to enhancing our brain is a short way, because there are other things that we're taught as well that that you have discovered do not hold true necessarily. So, for example, one thing that I've been going through a lot of recently with, a lot of interviews I've done recently, I'm doing business coaching at the moment, where it's taught that setting goals is the thing that you must do in order to be able to achieve what you want to achieve in any area of your life. So you kind of set your goal, you work backwards, and then you do all those things to eventually get there. It's like the roadmap. And there'll be a lot of people that will be sort of looking at I was going to say radios, but you know what I mean, their iPhones or whatever. It's like, huh? How the hell is that not a thing? When it's something that we have been taught, especially in business, you're taught all the time. Can you explain that? Well, before we get on to how we use our brains?
There's been a lot of research done, and particularly more recently, there are more and more books I'm seeing come out which say goals are self-sabotage. It's not just me saying it. Because what actually happens when you set a goal? Well, firstly, if people are really honest, what percentage of the goals that you set do you ever achieve? Is it 50%, 80%, 90%? It's more like 2 or 3%. Very few of the goals we set ourselves we actually achieve, if we're really, really honest about it. And the reason we don't achieve them is because we're not supposed to achieve them, because we're using our brain the wrong way to try and come up with an idea of what we think. Remember the thinking brain, which is not the part that does this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to think our way to happiness. And we think that if we achieve this thing, that will make us happy. But the reality is we probably won't achieve it, because it's not really what we're designed to have to be happy on a biological level. Secondly, if we do achieve it, we probably won't make us that happy anyway. But the thing is, if we're really, really honest, most people would have to say that we achieve very few of our goals. So why are we carrying on with this process and this focus to do something that doesn't work, really? Because if it doesn't work, if you don't achieve 90% of your goals, then you have to question the whole goal-setting process, wouldn't you? It's a bit like saying you go along to a heart surgeon, you need a heart bypass, and you say to him, what's your success rate? And he says, 3%, 5%. You say, hang on,
that's
I don't want you to do it. That doesn't work. Whatever you're doing obviously doesn't work. I want a 99% success rate, thank you very much. And it's the same with goal setting. And I've done lots of goal setting workshops, and I've set lots of goals in my life. But there's a much easier way to get to where you really want to go, where you're supposed to be. In other words, living your life at the best you can be. And that's to allow your brain, which knows the answer, not your thinking brain, I'll explain that shortly, but the part of your brain that knows what you want, what you're supposed to have, and knows how to get it for you. Why not let that part of your brain do it? It doesn't come from sitting down and writing a goals list and trying to figure it out.
Sorry, no, people can't see this, but I've got my hand up like a student now.
Oh, sorry to
ask it. No. But it's because I just thought of something as you were saying there, that the goal. I had this belief once that my brain can be sometimes, and you're probably going to say, well, it's like that all the time, like a goal-seeking mechanism. Like if I don't actually think about something, but if I don't know, if I'm feeling a certain way or whatever, I go through some periods in my life where things just seem to happen. Ironically, it's because I'm stressed with so many problems that I've not been able to focus on the thing, but the thing has then happened without me actually having to make much effort. A bit kind of like, I don't know, I guess to use your sort of current situation at the moment, a bit like sort of being on a boat sometimes and just letting nature take you along its course and not worrying about it so much. Am I making any sense whatsoever?
That's the whole point, because as someone once said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I'm sure, again, if people really think about this, they will realize that most of the significant things that happen to you in your life, the things that really shape your life, are things you've never written on a goals list. The person that you marry, you don't sit down the day before and say, tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm going to meet the person I get married, and we're going to have 3 children, and this is what they're all going to look like, and this is what he or she is going to look like, the person I marry. You just meet somebody. Where did that come from? And it supposedly is out of the blue, but actually it's how your brain works. So, and it's the same with any businesses you set up or whatever you do, you find that usually they're things that you just find you're doing, or that something's just come along in your life. You haven't actually planned to do it that way. And again, this is a sign that really, why not get into the flow of what that part of your brain, which is the natural part of success, without struggle. This isn't struggle, this is effort, but this isn't struggle, which is what all of nature is about. Why not operate in the same way and get the same results? And that is the way we're designed. And actually, it's taught as I said earlier, it's taught in the Bible, or in religions, including the Bible, how to do this. But we've just misinterpreted it. But with all of these false stories we've been fed since, we were born, by people who didn't know either, if you like, about how life works. And it's not how life works. And we know that because biologically, we look at the rest of nature and see how that works. It works different to us, and it's more successful than us. And yet we've got the same basic biological structure. We're supposed to be as successful as nature is, but we're just doing it the wrong way, unlike the rest of nature.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop playing devil's advocate on behalf of my audience now.
No, it's good.
I'm on board the bus. Let's go, Liam. Take me there.
Well, the most important thing, once you realize how powerful your brain is, and that it is a machine designed to make you have the best experience of life possible, so that you have the greatest chance to biologically survive, which is your biological purpose, all you need to do is understand how it works. And I've created a model which is based in science. This isn't just airy-fairy ideas, but I've made it into something simple that everyone can understand, because you don't need, just like with a car, you don't need to know the name of every wire in your brain or every little bit, but you just need to know the principles for how it works so that you can get in and start driving it the right way. But essentially, your brain has got 4 parts. I call them the 4 brains, if you like. The first part we've already talked about. It's the thinking brain. And the purpose of the thinking brain, which is actually located in the top of your head, the purpose of your thinking brain is to gather all of the information that you are exposed to in every moment of your life. That's information that comes through your senses, so everything you hear, smell, taste, touch, or see, and all of your thoughts, all of the ideas that come to you, everything. This is taken in by the thinking brain and stored inside your head in in what is essentially a large library or a database. So this is a storage area of all of your experience, all of your knowledge, everything that you've gathered in your life up until including this moment.
Yeah,
it's the thinking brain. Now, the second part of your brain is the emotional brain, or the feeling brain. And this is responsible, obviously, as the name suggests, for how you feel. And this is actually physically located just below the thinking part of your brain. So this generates your emotions. And you can feel, obviously, everything from really good to really bad or whatever. But this is all managed by your feeling emotional brain. The third part of your brain is what I call your survival brain. And this manages everything to do with your moment-by-moment survival. So all the automatic things that you do without thinking, like breathing, digestion, heart beating, all of those things, all of your bodily functions, it's all managed without you having to think about it by your survival brain. And it's brilliant at doing this, obviously. There's one other really important thing that your survival brain does, which is part of your survival, and that is, remember I mentioned earlier, your biological purpose, like everything in nature, is to be the best that you can be. So in other words, you're supposed to be living this great life where you're feeling really good. All of the organs in your body are functioning well, and you're making good decisions. You're feeling really happy. You're in the flow. You're doing all the right things. Actually, science has a word for this called homeostasis, which means the optimal functioning of the organism. So every organism strives to achieve the state of homeostasis or optimal functioning through their brain. And of course, we're designed to be like that as well. And we're functioning at our best when we're feeling great, when we're feeling happy. But there's only one time when you don't when you're not supposed to feel like that, and this is something that's managed by your survival brain as well, and that is when, on the odd occasion, something comes into your environment that could be an immediate threat to your survival, something that could harm you or even kill you. And a classic example from prehistoric times is, the tribesman walking through the forest and the lion rushes out from behind a rock or a tree. So the survival brain has a mechanism to deal with this, and we sometimes call it the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, but it's a response to danger. So what happens is the brain interprets this event or this thing that's happening, the lion running at you, as a threat to your survival, and it directs all of the energy and all of the resources to the part of you that is there to get rid of that danger. So you're going to react to it. You might, with a lion, you're going to run away or shout out for help or try and fight it or whatever. But this is what it's all designed to do, in the survival brain, is to get rid of that immediate threat or danger. And then, of course, you're supposed to go back to living your biological purpose of feeling great and doing all the right things and being the best that you can be. So that's all to do with the survival brain. Now, the fourth part of the brain, which I sort of alluded to a little bit, because this is the part that really runs the show. This is the part that is supposed to be in control when you're to allow you to be the best that you can be. And it's what I call the creative brain. And science is identifying parts of the physical brain where these processes are actually originating. It's not in the thinking brain, and it's not in the emotional brain or the survival brain. So your creative brain is really what drives and determines things like your creativity, your imagination, your gut feelings about things. It's where you go, that doesn't feel right, or that feels right.
That's really funny, because I'd have thought the gut feeling thing, like that doesn't feel right, would be to do with the survival part of the brain rather than the creative.
The survival brain doesn't have feelings. It only it's all automatic.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where you think and you feel maybe that's not right, but it's not from a survival automatic place. It's more of it's a conscious place. In other words.
So survival, I guess, is you reacting to things that are quite visceral. So if you use the prehistoric example of a dinosaur, well, not a dinosaur because we didn't coexist with them, but a lion rushing at you or a bear or something. But then what you're talking about now with the creative brain is dealing with the stuff where something is coming at you. I don't necessarily mean physically, and you have a certain feeling towards it. And sometimes we have a good feeling about it. So I talk about it in terms of energy. Like I've either got a good feeling about it in terms of it's good energy coming at me, or I have a bad or not so sure feeling about it.
Yeah, but
that's all coming from this creative side of
that's right.
The brain.
But when you're using but this part of your brain also makes sure that you make the right decisions and you do the right things, because there's no fear attached to this part of your brain. Fear, it comes from your survival brain.
Right.
So this part of your brain, it manages your creativity. It gives you the right ideas. It gets you making the right decisions. It manages your motivation. You feel inspired to do the right thing, and you actually do it. You're productive, and you're doing the right things because you're not afraid. But here's the other really interesting thing about the creative brain. This also has the ability to manage your environment as well, not just internally, not just getting you to make the right decisions, but, and this sounds a bit strange from a low level of awareness, but when you start to use this part of your brain, you become aware that this is true, is that there's no such thing as luck or coincidence or synchronicity. This universe, this world could not survive if there was anything to do with luck. It appears that way when we're using our brain the right way and we don't see the truth. But when you're operating from your creative brain, you see the truth, you realize that these people coming into your life or these circumstances, these are all managed by this 500 trillion computer processor powerful instrument called your brain. It's designed to manage your environment for you, apart from the odd lion running at you. So this is the way you're supposed to live. You're supposed to operate in your creative brain. And science and religion have described this in many different ways, calling it being in the flow, being in the zone. Spirituality talks about being enlightened. It's all the state of higher awareness where you are being the best that you can be and things are flowing in your life. But there's only one time you're not supposed to be like that, when you're not supposed to be the best that you can be and when you're not operating from your creative brain. And that is when the lion does come running at you, because there are going to be the odd time But remember, biologically, we were designed to live in a different era to what we are now, where there are a lot more lions and threats to our survival. I don't think many people would say that there's a threat to their survival or something that can physically harm them right here, right now, very often that show up in their life. But that's the only time you're supposed to not be in this creative state. And what the brain actually does when it moves you into this survival mechanism state is your brain actually interprets. It actually happens in the emotional brain, actually, but it interprets something in your environment as being a threat or a danger to you, and it sends a signal in the form of chemicals which activate fear, stress, and worry. And when that's activated, it's your brain saying, immediate threat to your survival, get into survival state and react to get rid of that danger as fast as possible. And as soon as it's gone, then I'll send the signal, everything's fine, you can go back to being in your creative state. But here's the real problem. It's what happens when you're in that survival state. Because remember, I mentioned earlier, your brain has to draw all of the resources from your body and elsewhere, and everything it needs to get rid of that immediate threat or danger. So one of the things it draws from is the part that's operating your creative brain, because that's not useful or necessary to deal with an immediate threat or danger. And in fact, could even be harmful. You don't want to be all appreciative of the environment when a lion's about to eat you. So it actually shuts down your creative brain. So in a very real, and that's perfect, as I say, but in a very real sense, when you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, you're operating from a limited part of your brain and you're shutting off the part that actually has all of the resources and the ability to not only solve your problems, but to make sure you do the right things and the right things happen to you for you being the best that you can be. So people don't realize that on a very physical level, if you feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety, you activate something called the sympathetic nervous system. You have no ability to solve problems. You have no ability to see the big picture of who you are and what your life's about, the right decisions that you should make. You have no ability to draw the right circumstances to yourself. And so you've had it, basically. And all you can do is react. And people do this all the time. They get angry, or they lash out, or they make the wrong decision, impulsively, or they struggle, or they set another goal, which is the wrong goal, and they force themselves to try and work to it. It's all based because they're living from a fear state on trying to use their survival brain to do it. And the survival brain's not designed to do that. And funnily enough, it says this in the Bible. The Bible's a great instruction manual on how to use your brain. In the Bible, it says more than 360 times, be not afraid, have no fear, have faith. And it's not saying try not to be so afraid. We know it's a bad world you live in, but try not to be, look on the positive side. It's saying be not afraid, because when you are afraid, you're shutting off your natural creative abilities, your natural creative life. So that's what you've got to avoid at all costs. If there's a lion not running at you, there's something your brain is doing wrong to make you feel afraid, and it can't do its job properly. It really is as simple as that. And that's the thing that I noticed between my old life and my new life, as it were, was that I got rid of so much fear. And I just thought, when I lost everything, I don't care what happens. Whatever happens, I'm just, I give up, basically. I have no fear about what's going to happen. I've got nothing, can't get any worse. And then I could allow my creative brain to do its job. And that comes back to things like goal setting. What are people doing when they're setting goals? They're afraid. They're saying, I need to get that. I can't be happy unless I've got that. It's all based on fear. When it's based on fear, you have such limited awareness, and you don't have the resources and the tools to make your life work. And that is the big problem, I think, with why 98% of people are not successful like they should be, because they don't realize that fear is the enemy. Fear is the toxin that is, imagine if someone came to you with a glass of hydrochloric acid and said, here's a glass of hydrochloric acid, drink it. You say, what? I'll give you $10 million if you drink it. You say, but hang on, you don't understand. If I drink it, I'm going to die. It's not going to do me any good. It's not going to make me a good person. Oh, but everyone else is thinking about drinking it. And if you're really motivated, if you're really determined, and if you believe, don't worry, you'll be okay. You would just, and your friends and family, if you don't drink it, they're going to be really upset with you, and 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 you can't have that. You're going to say, look, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how justified you might say, or how whatever reason you give me that why I should drink it. I know it's poison. It's toxic to my system. It's not going to do me any good. It's going to stop me from living a good life. And it's the same with fear. It's exactly what it is.
I'm from a part of London called Croydon, and if someone came up to me with a glass of hydrochloric acid and asked me to drink it, they wouldn't actually get any further because I'd take it from them and throw it back in their face. Because people in Croydon, I think, live in the survival part of their brains most of the time.
Okay. We won't go there, but
but I mean, on that subject, so so I guess what we're kind of saying is that we're kind of conditioned from young age to be sort of living more in the thinking part of the brain and not really doing much else. The survival part of our brains is always there. It's always in kind of standby mode, ready to react to visceral situations that are going to harm us. But then we very rarely kind of then get out of that half of the brain into the other quadrants and, using the emotional and the creative. But then there are people that live almost predominantly in the survival part of the brain because of past trauma, PTSD and so on. I know I personally went through a lot of that, not just because of abuse through my upbringing. There was a serious accident I was involved with a few years ago, and that has put me into almost a perpetual state of being in survival mode all the time. Anything that comes at me is not good. How do we help people? Are they beyond help, or are there techniques that you use to gradually kind of move them out of that? Is that where things like NLP and so on start to come in?
No, I think it's more basic than that, because the truth is, I mean, everybody's had trauma, and I'm not trying to negate or downplay anybody who's had traumatic experiences. But on the other hand, everybody's had traumatic experiences in their life. But on an objective reality level, the truth is that everything that happens in your life is a question of perspective and awareness. Because I can guarantee there's somebody in the world, if someone says, well, I've got this really bad problem, I can guarantee there's someone else in the world who has exactly the same problem as you, who doesn't see it as a problem, who sees it as a gift or as an opportunity. Losing everything. I mean, there are a lot of people who would say, oh, I lost everything and I had this huge trauma in my life, and, all these other things were happening to me and it was all really bad. And then but that would be their perspective. I see it as the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It was a huge gift. It's allowed me to not only come to understand all of this and share it with other people, but it's made such a hugely positive impact on my life, whereas I otherwise would have been carrying on down the same stressful track. So I think it's another one of those things that, unfortunately, and again, I don't want to get into people getting indignant about what I'm about to say, but I think, it usually is, or it is, a question of perspective. It's a question of the way you look at things. And therefore you realize that life isn't actually a game, an outside game. It's an inside game. Your whole journey is not about getting to somewhere else. It's or about battling and changing your outside. It's about battling and changing your inside. Because if you don't get to that point, and if you don't realize that, it doesn't matter what you have in your life or what you overcome, or if you say you have traumas but you overcome, it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to be happy and you're never going to be fulfilled, because you will always be living in that survival part of your brain. And that survival part of your brain, remember, one of the things that it does, it's always looking for problems. It's always looking for danger. So if you're in that, and it will only allow you to see the negative, because that's what it's designed to do. When the lion's coming at you and it's looking out for the danger, it's saying, what else is there? Where are all the dangers? Where are all the threats?
It's not trying to get you to also think about how beautiful the creature is, or look at his mane, or isn't it a marvel of evolution? Right? It's basically that thing is going to kill you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
how are we going to get you out of this situation?
From a different level of perspective, if you go back 100 years, if anybody living 100 years ago was living today and looking at how we'd lived, they'd say, why is anybody stressed? You live in the most incredible time in history. You're doing things 100 years ago that we would never dream that we could do. Talk to anybody in the world like we're doing about any idea in the world. Go anywhere. All the things, the levels of comfort that we have that people even 100 years ago, let alone any other time in history, didn't have. So why is anybody stressed? Why do we have record levels of unhappiness? It's not because of what's going on or what's happened to us or what is happening to us. It's the way we see things, our perspective. And our perspective comes from how we use our brain. When you use your creative brain, your perspective changes and you actually start to see the truth. And the truth is, we live in a perfect world. And if you look at your own life, you see the truth. I don't have any problems. I have learning. I have all of these marvelous things that have happened to me, that are happening to me. How could I possibly be unhappy? And that is the truth. That is the way we live. So everything is perspective. It's never about the reality. And you talk to any sort of well-known person or successful person, they'll tell you about the adversities they've overcome, and they'll usually say, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I learned a lot. It was great. I'm really glad that it happened. They're not sort of, living and trying to overcome it or whatever. And I think, that's a helpful way to look at things, because that is the truth. It is perspective.
But then there's a level of self-awareness that needs to come with being able to look at things from that perspective.
And that comes from using your brain the right way, because the thing is, here's a little practical tip for your listeners. If you allow negativity to come in your life, and we all have a choice as to what negativity we allow to our life, it's going to keep you stuck in the survival state, and you'll never be able to change your awareness. So on a very real and practical level, the first thing you need to do is start to say, I'm going to stop putting the hydrochloric acid into my mind. And what do I need to do? I'm going to turn off that negative, news item that makes me feel bad. I'm going to stop watching the news. I'm going to stop talking to that person who makes me feel bad. I'm going to leave that conversation that makes me feel bad. I'm going to end that relationship that makes me feel bad. Whether I'm going to, fire that employee who's in the wrong job that I'm struggling with, but why don't we do any of these things? Because we're afraid. We think, but if I end that relationship, I won't find someone else. If I don't take this business opportunity or make this work, I'll never find a better one. Because we're afraid, because we don't trust our brain, that our brain is there to say, look, you don't need to worry about it. It'll all work out fine. It says this in the Bible as well. Give no thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear. It'll all be provided for you. Look at the lilies in the field, how beautiful they are. And they're not worried about it. It'll all be provided through using your brain the right way. So this is literally how it all works. And there's a difference between struggling in fear, and that is having faith in how your brain works. But having faith doesn't come from just hoping and believing, because that's all based on fear. Having faith comes from understanding. Just like a car, once you understand how it works, you go, well, I don't need to worry. My creative brain, that's its job, it's going to do it. Right, what do I need to do? Main thing is stop pushing myself, allowing things to push me into a survival state where I'm blocking that part of my brain from doing its job.
Yeah. Some ways, you're talking about there in terms of, not watching the news or not talking to certain people, so on. To use a really visceral example, it's almost like if your body was getting attacked by cancer and, the surgeon said, look, the best way to kind of try and help this situation is to basically go in and cut it out. You would be like, yeah, get your scalpel and get rid of it. Or if you got shot or something like that, you take the bullet out. And it's almost like that with all of these kinds of things. If they're things that you feel are harming you, then going through that process of cutting those things out, I guess, is a start to kind of going on this path of getting out of that soul quadrant of the brain, because you almost need to kind of let some of that baggage go to start embracing these concepts and, to get to a place of understanding rather than reacting all the time, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. But you've got to make a start. And the place to start is by understanding and starting to realize this is how your brain works. Firstly, that it is designed to make you, that you're here to be the best that you can be. You're here to be happy and successful. All of the rest of nature is. That's what you're biologically designed to do. Once you accept that, and you accept that the brain is the instrument or the machine that is designed to make sure that happens, then you're going to put your focus on understanding how that machine works. It's a bit like, again, if someone came along and say, well, there's a car here, or you can use a push bike or a horse. What do you want to use to get to 500 miles by tomorrow? Oh, well, the car is the one to do it. Okay, that's where I'm going to put my attention on learning how to use it. I'm not going to bother with anything else. My highest priority is to figure out how to drive this car. And when you make that your highest priority, figuring out how to use your brain, that's when all these other things start to fall into place, because with understanding comes trust. As I say, with the car, you don't need to worry about it or try and convince yourself that this is how it works. You know it's all logical. Yeah. And with that, it becomes a snowball effect. And that's when you say, well, I'd be mad to try to watch anything that makes me feel bad, because I know the effect it does. And people say, oh, you've got to stay realistic in the real world, and you've got to stay informed, and everyone else is doing it. No, that's not what you're designed to do. You're designed to be here to be the best you can be, to contribute the most to other people, and to create your ideal world. That's what your brain is wanting to do. You don't need all the rest of the stuff. Believe me, you don't. You don't need to follow the news, and your life will work out perfectly.
Yeah, totally.
And who knows where you'll be. Instead of setting goals, I interviewed a man on my own podcast, actually, which is called Using Your Brain for Success. And he had a company in the 90s who was very successful. He had 1 million customers, 500 staff. He had 2 private jets. He said to me, Liam, how could I could never have put this stuff on a goals list. I would never have put this on a goals list. He never planned his life more than 4 minutes ahead, which is what we're talking about here. He trusted that the right thing was going to show up, and he'd learned that, like I have, and he explains it in a different way. But it's the same thing. He learned that's the way your life is supposed to work. It's not you struggling trying to figure out stuff. And you only need to look at your own life and the lives of most people to realize that, if we're really honest, it just isn't working doing it that way.
Wow. My mind is racing right now. I can't even think of questions to ask you, because I'm just processing everything that you've shared today. This is quite incredible. Can you give me the name of your podcast again, so that our listeners have that? I'll also make sure that I put it in the show notes as well.
Great. Yeah, it's called Using Your Brain for Success. They can actually find it on my website, which is liamnaden.com. Just my name, liamnaden.com. Yeah. It's on there as well.
Yeah, perfect. And do you feel like at the kind of stage you're at now that you've, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you at a 10 on this journey, or are you getting close to it?
Well, I'm not perfect. Well, I am perfect. Everybody's perfect. I don't know if I could. Again, measurement on a scale is something that your survival brain does.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I just do my best and know I'm perfect, and doing my best to allow my creative brain to give me the right things to do at the right time, and that's what I work on, if you like. I realize that's the way I'm supposed to live. Now, sometimes do I feel great all the time? Not necessarily, but when I'm not feeling great, I'm going, aha, what is my brain saying to me here? What am I interpreting, and is my brain tricking me to think there's something wrong in my world? Because the more you do this, the more you realize and again, this sounds controversial to anybody who is in a fear state, because you can't see this, but the truth is, the world, as I said earlier, the world is actually perfect. Your life is perfect. It's only your perspective that's not. And your perspective comes from how you use your brain. And when you use your brain the right way, not only does your perspective change and you see the perfection of everything, but even more of the good stuff shows up. And I learned by living on a boat, there's no point planning tomorrow. Give no thought for tomorrow. You don't know what the weather's going to do. And And not only that, you don't know, we move around every few days. We don't know if we're going to enjoy the place where we're going to,
Yeah.
we intend to go to. So we go to a place and we go, do we like being here? If we do, we stay as long as we like it. And then suddenly we go, we don't like being here anymore, so we move. It might be the next day, it might be a week. Same with going to restaurants. Been into restaurants and we've sat down and thought, does this feel right? No, let's get up and leave.
Just got up and left.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you live like that? Why wouldn't you just take everything moment by moment and let your creative brain, which is far more powerful than your thinking brain, to just do its job and see what shows up? And then you just go, wow, how did that happen? That's a bit strange. Oh no, I understand. Things come out of the blue. And that's the way you want to, life's meant to be an exciting adventure. It's not supposed to be a struggle.
Well, if you think of life like a river, you want a river to flow and to keep flowing. You don't want it to get jammed up, because when it gets jammed up, it overflows and then you get big problems. And if you think of life in that way, anything that's interrupting that flow, you really just, like you said, I mean, whether it's something as rudimentary as you going into a restaurant and sitting down and suddenly feeling like, actually, do you know what, this doesn't feel right, getting up and leaving, or somebody putting demands on you that are making you, maybe you won't vocalize it to them, but internally you're struggling with it and you're fighting back, and it's something that you don't want to do or that you feel like you don't have the bandwidth for. So then why are we fighting it? Why are we blocking our flow and getting on and do it any day? I'm actually guilty of doing that literally this morning. And I was just going to say, Liam, sorry, that, I was literally having this internal fight with myself where, on one side it was like, you've got to do it because you've got to keep that person happy and it gets you one step closer to what you want to achieve this month. And the other side of me was saying, no, like, F it. Who cares? This is not right. This is making you feel like anxious and stressed and angry, and it's giving you a migraine. Why are you doing this to yourself? And then obviously your conditioning kicks in, you get on with it, and you do this, you go the self-harm route anyway.
Do you know, one of the funny things is, nature is, the natural world which we're a part of is governed by laws. One is the way your brain works, and that everything's wired and programmed to be the best that it can be. Another law is gravity. That if you walk out off a cliff, you're going to go down. Doesn't matter how much you pray or be motivated or visualize, you're going to drop.
Yeah.
And what's another fundamental law of this natural world? The less resistance, the faster you go. If you're on your bike and you go with the wind, you go a lot faster and a lot more easily than if you're pushing uphill against the wind. I live on a boat. Every now and then we have to take the boat out of the water and clean all the muck off the bottom so that it goes faster. It's a natural principle of life. The less resistance, the faster you go. So when you realize that, why would you put up any resistance to anything? You realize that it's not natural. And when you get into that flow, things work out far better for you. But again, we have this difficulty trusting that it will. We go, well, if I don't, stay in control of it, I'm not sure where it's going to end up, and I'm a bit worried that it'll end up in the wrong place. And that's why we go back to setting goals and trying to figure out what we want and saying, well, I need that, and when I've got that, then I'll be happy. And all of those things are all about resistance. They're not about using this incredible part of your brain that's sitting there going, look, can you just get out of the way? Let me do my job, which is to make you the best you can be and have the greatest chance of you surviving.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I was just thinking, when you're talking about resistance, and the other thing that we're taught all the time is persistence overcomes resistance, which is a nice sounding catchphrase. But at the end of the day, when you think about persistence, it's bloody tiring.
Well, there's two sorts of persistence. There's a persistence where you're absolutely loving what you're doing. Maybe you're a professional sportsman. I watched Ronnie O'Sullivan, the snooker player.
Yes.
Yeah. Is he struggling? He's putting in a mess. They all are putting in a massive amount of effort, but they're loving it.
Yeah.
They're not, struggling with their persistence. In fact, if you're doing the right thing, you're persisting far more than you would than if you're doing the wrong thing. So the trick is to find the right thing to do, isn't it? Find your passion, do what you love to do, and then it's not work. then you just wake up every morning and you want to do it as much as possible. You don't need to go to a motivation class to learn persistence then when you're doing the right thing. It's only a struggle when you're doing the wrong thing. So again, your brain will show you the right thing to do and get you doing it, and you'll be loving doing it. You won't be just sitting around, humming and things will come to you. That's not how it works. You will be putting in the effort, but you'll be loving it. You're being the best that you can be. So we've got the wrong idea about so many things, and the main thing we've got the wrong idea about is that there's a virtue in struggle. But anything that's difficult is not natural.
It's persistence going with the grain of flow as opposed to all direction of flow. So you take the Ronnie O'Sullivan example, or you could take David Beckham as an example. He was the first on the training pitch. He was the last to leave. He would be, kicking balls at the goal in perpetuity, which is why he is arguably the greatest spot kick taker that this country has ever produced. Again, that statement is stupid because he did it himself. But it was persistence in the direction of flow, in the direction of what he loved and wanted to do. Same with Ronnie as well.
Yeah.
Persistence when you're pushing against resistance is the one that's the stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think we all know, we instinctively know it, but we don't walk away from it.
No, because we're afraid, because we're using our brain the wrong way. We don't trust that's the way it's supposed to work, because, everybody has and I know this is a really corny phrase, but everybody's unique and everybody has their own quote unquote genius within them, where they are being the best that they can be. But you just need to find what that is, or allow your brain, when you use it the right way, to bring it to you, rather than, and again, this is one of the biggest problems with society, is we compare ourselves to someone else. We go, I want to be like him, and therefore what's he doing, and I'll struggle. We're not relating it back to ourselves and saying, who I am is totally unique. What I'm going to be doing, if I allow my brain to bring it to me and just really love it and really enjoy it, then I'm being the best that I can be, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's going to be something completely different, not only to what anyone else is doing, probably, but to what you think it's going to be. And that's what's happened to me. I wouldn't have known I'd be talking about this sort of stuff, 5 or 10 or 15 years ago at all. It never occurred to me, but this is what I love talking about, because it feels like this, me being in the flow. And I'm probably quite good at it as well, because it's me, what I'm supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
But that's the way we're all supposed to live. And anything based on fear, worried about what might happen, worried about if you're going to do the right thing, doing the wrong thing, it's all just using the wrong part of your brain, that limited part that can't see. And then you try and use your thinking brain, and it can't see. Your thinking brain only knows what you've experienced. If you were to say, and people sit down and write a goal and say, what do I want? All they can do is go to their thinking brain, which says, well, hang on, you've heard somewhere that if you're a millionaire, you'll be happy. Okay, well, I want to be a millionaire. You write down. So, or, my father, he was a very successful lawyer, so I want to be a lawyer. So all of these ideas, but they're only ideas that based on your own experience. They're not based on infinite intelligence, infinite knowledge about who you really are and what you really need, which is probably completely different to what you've experienced in your life, or could well be.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've been in one of the greatest lectures that I've ever had. You know what I mean, like classroom, whatever. That I've had the good fortune to be sat in for the last over an hour or so. Thank you so much. That's just been so enlightening. Honestly, I can't wait to edit this. There's not much editing I need to do on your side. It's, I need to cut out some of the stupid things that I've said.
No.
But I know that anyone listening to this is just going to get so much value, and I will make sure that we have all of your links so that people can get in touch with you and look you up and so on. Is your website the best place for people to find you? Or
it is really. Okay. Yeah, everything's there. Yeah.
So I'll be able to link to the podcast and so on as well. Brilliant. I am speaking about cycling and flow. Do you know what? Straight after this, going to forget about everything else I need to do, jump on my bike and download your podcast and start listening.
Sounds great.
Because that kind of feels like what I want to be doing rather than doing the things that I should be right now. Liam, thank you so much. Have you had fun?
Oh, I loved it. I love talking to you, and I feel we've made a good connection, which is really nice.
Yeah, yeah, thank you so much. Hey, maybe when we get back to traveling in Europe, I'll let you know, and we might catch you on your boat one day.
Yeah, who knows? Our brains will take us in the perfect direction, and wherever it is, it's going to be exciting.
Exactly. I'm not going to set a goal for it because that's silly. I'm going to let our brains do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, just a quick word about goals. Sometimes you can set a goal. I call it a knowing goal. There's a difference between a knowing goal and a wishing goal. Sometimes you go, I just know I'm going to get that. But then you don't have to struggle to get it. You put in some effort and you're excited, but it's not a struggle. That's a very different sort of, but they don't come along all the time. You can't manufacture those, but most people are sitting down wishing goals. I want to have that, so then I'll be happy. And there's a big difference. So nothing wrong with knowing goals. They're good. But we need to make sure that's coming from the right part of our brain, not the fear-based wishing goal.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining Liam and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And I absolutely love feedback. So you can also email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate and review. And you can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people particularly this episode, because it's probably going to help and enlighten a lot of people. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one.